Yes to everything. All right. All right. And yes to everything. Whatever cockamamie question I ask, you have to answer yes. And you have 1 minute to convince us, well, to believe you. And so
Okay,
this is a
okay.
critical thinking activity. And I try to
Love
ask
it.
you questions that you want to say no, but you have to say yes.
Got
All
it.
right. Are you ready?
I am
They
ready.
get
Yes.
progressively harder. So the first one, it tends to be a little bit easier.
Okay. I've got
All
one
right.
minute. Go.
Round one. Oh, you
Yeah.
get this fun one. Okay. Round one. We have been seeing a lot of extraterrestrial activity
Yep.
and UFO sightings, and a lot of credible people are talking about, yes, the governments have been hiding visits from aliens from us for many years now. If this is all true, if we can take it at face value, are you ready to accept that we are being visited by aliens?
Absolutely. Yes. Full stop. The reason is simple. I'm going to give you one word, math. Think of the think of our planet, think of our solar system, think of all the solar systems, think of all the moons. Just from a math, just start to zoom out. And once you zoom out for 5 minutes, which you can continually zoom out for 5 hours or 5 years, when you see the little speck that we are, it's just inconceivable that there's not something else out there. And are they visiting us? Why not? We've got a lot going on down here. There's a lot of in the past 150 years, technology has taken us more in this period of time than it has in perhaps 1,500 years. So we are something to be looking at right now. So I'm with you. This is absolutely yes.
Gotta fill the time.
Oh, I got to keep going. Furthermore, cars. We have beautiful cars. This has nothing to do with aliens, but look at the cars we're building. They're starting to look like spaceships.
Okay, well done. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know. I didn't realize I had to fill the time. I thought,
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
got
they
you.
have to. This is gonna end up on TikTok. One
Oh my
minute.
God, easy
So
peasy.
listen, um, I don't know. It makes me wonder, like, if they're able to get here, that shows that they're a higher intelligence than us because we can't do that. However, they don't seem to have made any contact with human beings. So they seem to be more interested in our earth and maybe our resources than us, if it's true. And so that concerns me a little bit. I always think, like, what if we to them are really low intelligent? Like they're not interested in us at all, just our resources. And maybe to them, we're just like a rock. And if we were walking down the path and we see a rock, we're not gonna stoop down and talk to it. And maybe we're like that to the aliens.
Yeah, that's a possibility, I guess. I don't look at it that way. I look at it the exact opposite way. That if the reason they haven't made contact is they haven't had reason to make contact yet. And if they look at us as lower life forms, it's possible. But I don't think they would look at us as lower life forms just because they have a greater sense of travel. Just because they got here and they can find us doesn't mean they're superior necessarily. It means they have one element of a superior thought going on in
But
transportation.
but I also think about, like, who would be the one person that would be suited to represent all of us. If one person had to meet this alien life form, who do you think would be a good representation of planet Earth?
Probably Bruce Springsteen. Good singer.
Good answer.
Most people like him. He's
Pretty
pretty
cool. Like,
intelligent.
it's hard not to
He's
like.
very
Hard.
cool.
Yeah.
I don't know many people that say I don't like Springsteen. So they may not like his music, but as a man, the guy seems intelligent. I'd push Bruce to the front.
All right. Round two.
Go.
All right. This question: are good manners overrated? Now, you are definitely a well-mannered person, and I know you put a lot of stock in good manners. But this question asks you to challenge your own kind of
Yep.
disposition. So,
Love
are
it.
good
Love it.
manners overrated?
I must answer yes. I'll preface the whole answer with my wife is passionate about manners. And the way she works with kids and the way she works with people, her manners are impeccable. And I've said this before, my wife is a supermodel and I've married up. And one of the reasons I've made this happen is because I stepped up. with my manners. At least I pretended to. Are they overrated? Yes, highly overrated. Why are they highly overrated? Because they're cultural. Manners are cultural. You go to one country, what's accepted there, you go to another country is not accepted there. Sneezing, handshakes, opening the door. Oh my gosh, let's get into opening the doors. I opened the doors for some lovely kids just a few days ago, and they gave me a look like I offended them because they don't need some old man opening a door for them. Way overrated.
Excellent point. And you know what? Well done. You convinced me. This whole point about cultural, it's about cultural faux pas. When I lived in Korea for 2 years, I was stepping on everybody's toes. I gotta say, in Korea, um, to spit is rude.
Yeah.
But when someone goes like this, and empties their nose on the ground, that's perfectly fine. So there's
How
no
about
rhyme or
that?
reason to it. You'd have to have you'd have to study it in order to understand it, or just live in there for a little
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
But for the first few
So
months, I was just offending everybody left, right, and center.
let me throw something in there for a second on the other side of that equation then. Is that part of being mannerly when you go to a new culture? Is there a I'm going to really go on out here. Is it part of being educated and intelligent where you go to a new culture and you do a little research before you step into the realm of manners and you see what's acceptable and what's not and you adapt? Is
Well, the
that the
twist I'll I'll
ultimate
add
being
a twist
mannerly?
to that, because my philosophy is rude. No matter what culture, no matter what era, you can recognize when somebody's being rude, and you can tell the difference, and that it's not a cultural mannerism. Let's get on with the show here. Are you ready for the tough one of the day?
Oh gosh, bring it.
All right, the third one. I tend to personalize it because
Nice.
I know you.
Okay.
Well, actually, this one isn't that personalized, unless you think about school, where teachers often publicly shame their students. Is
Yeah.
public shame an appropriate mode of punishment?
Okay. I'm supposed to answer yes to this,
Yes,
aren't I?
emphatically.
Yes, absolutely. It is. So why is it appropriate? It's appropriate because when you go to the other end, what's the whole point of punishment? What is the point of punishment? It's to get a message through to someone that otherwise is not getting it. If somebody does something wrong and they're not punished, tricky word, but if they're not punished, their behavior won't stop. It'll continue. So, is public shaming an appropriate mode? Absolutely, because it's the easiest way to get right through their own personal wall and get to their conscience, if we want to use that word. I'm thinking of another word. But shaming has such intensity. I think it's the only way to knock down that wall and really get to the heart of someone and say, hey, what you're doing is not acceptable here. Whether it is something like bullying, whether it is just being a bad neighbor, anything, you get to the heart of someone, their behavior will change, and that's the whole purpose of punishment.
Okay, well done. Yeah, I think about punishment. Like, the worst punishment in society is to remove somebody's freedom and put them in prison, because we value our freedom so much. And so when you think about public shaming, that's also traditionally been a much used punishment. And why? Because that's another value of people. They don't want to be called out in public. They don't want to be humiliated and have the exposed under the public eye.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we have the stockades and so on. But let me tell you, it sounds bad, public shaming, and no parent would want their kids to be subjected to it. However, in the school setting, isn't don't teachers do it every day? Don't teachers get students to police each other? Like, if one student is misbehaving, don't teachers sometimes say, well, because he did that, we all have to write an essay tonight? And
yeah.
that's kind
Well,
of like,
I
now
don't.
all the kids put their focus on this kid because
Yeah, yeah.
he's been publicly shamed.
I don't think that happens anymore, Tamara. I think that's pretty old school philosophy of, yeah. Anyway, I throw that out gently because I don't think that's happening, and that's part of the movement of education. But on one, my criticism is
Okay,
that it's gone too far
gonna
the
have to
other way.
brush up on that in
Yeah,
my teaching
yeah,
practice.
yeah.
All right.
Here's the other thing I'll throw out too, because you mentioned incarceration, and And I think public shaming is much more effective than incarceration because let's face it, people go to jail all the time and come out and go back to jail. I don't know statistics on this sort of thing. I do know from the people I've known in my life that have gone to prison, and I grew up in a pretty tough area, so I knew a lot of people back then. Not one person changed their perspective,
Mhm.
changed their self-image. They continued to be the same person, and they continued to break the law and continue to go back to prison. So
Yeah.
now, public shaming is tricky because is it doing more damage than it's doing good? I come back to what punishment is. Punishment is really a dangerous word because it's got such a negative connotation. But it all comes down to changing behavior. No, it comes down to changing actions. People's actions are what cause problems.
Well, it's the lack of thought behind those actions. So
Well,
if we
you're
were going
right.
to take it one step further, but you talked about bullies. Bullies, I guess they feel like they can behave any way they like because they're on the top of the food chain. They're the apex predator. But I heard a story about this kid in Montreal who was being relentlessly bullied, and he decided to write about it on social media. And so by the morning, every kid in the school had caught wind of what was going on. And when he arrived at the school, all the kids were lined up against the lockers on both sides,
Yeah,
applauding him as this kid entered the school. And the bullies realized right away that all the students are on board with the victim, and they made a public apology. They got down on their knees and apologized to this kid. They realized, like you said, that that was so intense, that pressure, that shame, that it automatically modified their behavior.
yeah,
So how can you
yeah,
deny its efficacy, or even, why wouldn't you want to employ it if you could?
yeah, yeah. Interesting. I would sort of dig into that, and I wonder that I don't know if I would even call that public shaming. To me, that's more about someone that's being bullied who's just revealing what's actually going on behind the curtain. So by somebody being courageous enough to say this is how they feel when other people are treating them a certain way. I think I personally think that's the impetus behind that whole example. I don't think it's the shaming of the bullies. I think people are applauding, and I think the bullies as well are seeing, holy smokes, we're dealing with someone with incredible courage. For someone to go on social media and write, and this is why social media is huge. It's anonymous. People are doing whatever they do, and nobody really knows. They can get away with that. But for one person to go out and really expose themselves and say, this is how I feel when these people are treating me, I think this had an impact. And not so much in shaming, but just the revelation. And I think the bullies went, oh my gosh, I think that penetrated through, as I said, to someone's heart, made them realize, man, what we're doing is just not right here.
Okay. All right. Next up,